Consider the following program, which is intended to display the number of times a number target appears in a list. So we're going to have some list of numbers, and we have a specific target, say like target equals 4. And what this code is going to do is iterate through the list and count the number of times target appears. So if it went through this list, it would go through each and count the number of 4s, and the output result should just be 4. Okay, so that's what the code is intended to do. Well, let's actually read the code now. So our first line says count is assign the value 0. So that means count, which is the number of times target appears, is initially 0. That's good because in the beginning, if we're iterating through it when we haven't started the iteration, then the number of targets should be 0. Then we have this loop here, which says for each n in list. So n is going to be some random integer, and it's going to be equal to the value in list, and it's going to keep iterating through the list till it gets through every value. So whatever's inside this loop is going to run once for every number in list. So for each n in list, so every time we go through a number in list, we do this if statement, which checks if n, the number we're currently on in list, is equal to target. So this determines whether the current element in the list we're at is the target element, the number that we're looking for. If it is, then increase the value in count by 1. We set count equal to count after 1 is added to count. So if target was the first element, we ran through this once, then count would become 1, and so on for every time target appears. If n does not equal target, meaning the current element we're on is not the target element, then this statement here inside the if statement does not run, and we go back up here and just go to the next element and run this again. After we've gone through every element in list, we display count, which is the number of times target appears. So looking at this code, we can see that it accounts for every possibility and will accurately count the number of times target appears. So let's go through the answer choices. Which of the following best describes the behavior of the program? So A says the program correctly displays the number of times target appears in the list. This is probably correct. The code does not seem to have any bugs, and it accurately goes through every list element and checks if it's equal to target and adds 1 to count and displays it. B says the program does not work as intended when target does not appear in the list. If target doesn't appear in the list, then that means this if statement will never be true. All the numbers in list will never be equal to target, which means count will never be increased by 1. So that means that count will stay at 0, and we will just return 0 at the end. So if target does not appear in the list, the program will still perform as intended. C says the program does not work as intended when target appears in the list more than once. So if target appears in the list more than once, then count will just be incremented multiple times, because we're going through each list element one at a time. And if it equals target once, it'll increase count by 1 again. And then later on, when target n equals target, it'll just increase count again. Count can only be increased once per number in the list. So there should be no problem when target appears more than once, because we deal with each case on a case-by-case basis, whether to increase count by 1 or not, going through each of the elements in list. So C is not correct. D says the program does not work as intended when target appears as the last element of the list. So this would not be a problem, because the for each n in list ensures that we go through every single element only once. So whether it's the last element, the first element, or in the middle, it doesn't matter, since we go through every element in list once. So if target is the last element, there's no change in how the code works. So the code will still work as intended. So A is the correct answer. It will correctly display the number of time target appears on the list. There's no logic flaws or bugs in this code.